The following program is made possible through funding provided by the Duval County Public Schools.
On this edition of School Matters, we'll talk with newly elected School Board Chair Vicki Drake on her goals and priorities. A new initiative seeks to help eliminate the student achievement gap through appreciating differences. And has kindergarten become the new first grade? Welcome to this month's program. I'm Stacy Ellison. Duval County Public Schools has just started a new effort aimed at overcoming the student achievement gap through the creation of a diversity council. Here to explain how the process will work are Public Schools Superintendent Joseph Wise, the Equity Officer from the Office of Equal Opportunity, Josephine Jackson, and Jeff Davis Middle School Principal, Addison Davis. Thank you all so much for being here today. First things first, what exactly is the Diversity Council?
It's a group of people who have come together who will help us move forward with our efforts around diversity and inclusion. We're at the first step of this process that we've undertaken, and we've had our first meeting on November 13th with great success, I might add, and great enthusiasm. And it's just a way that we are looking at to move our district forward, as I said, to address some of the issues that might impact students from achieving and to eliminate our achievement gap. So.
Now, one of those first components in this overall scheme of things is the SPIRIT program that's being implemented in some schools here in the district now. Principal Davis is at one of those schools, and tell me how that's working and why it's necessary.
It's really a groundbreaking program that Dr. Wise, along with Josephine Jackson, brought on board with us, and we're aligned with the U.S. Department of Justice. And it's a program that we can bridge a connection between our kids, between our community, and between all of our stakeholders in our building. It's a program where we allow kids to somewhat identify our problems in reference to what's going on inside the community and outside, and also inside the school, and allow them, and along with us collectively, to identify some problems and let them identify the resolutions and move forward proactively. And that way we can build them socially and academically with our institution.
And when we speak of these achievement gaps, let's define this problem. What exactly are we speaking of? Academic achievement gaps?
Well, definitely academically and social achievement gaps. Achievement gaps is on the forefront of what we do, especially in Duval County under the mission of our core beliefs and our commitments. It's something that has to be addressed because No Child Left Behind is definitely proactive in reference to accountability, and we got to make sure that we provide a quality education to every student every day, and this just is a program to help us do that.
So follow the path. Eliminate achievement gaps. You know, I've said a few times on this show that I walk in with a school board already committed to eliminating achievement gaps, which means wherever there are performance gaps, they're not around identifiable groups of children, either along lines of race or gender or socioeconomic status or any other ways that you can easily identify students. And from there, you won't eliminate anything if you don't eliminate obstacles to performance. And so all sorts of obstacles, we've had a chance to talk through a number of them on this show in the past, where we have lack of great teaching or lack of the right materials or lack of the right focus or time spent. Well, this is a whole area that we need to bulldoze obstacles and eliminate obstacles where we do things to one another that aren't the right kinds of things. Again, around racial lines of gender, socioeconomic status, all sorts of things. And this council, by the way, we think it's the first time that central office administrators, principals, assistant principals, teachers, high school students, and middle school students have worked together to build strategy for the district. They, by the way, named themselves the Council on Equity and Educational Equity and Inclusion. So I think it's going to be terrific, the work that they help Ms. Jackson, myself, and other leaders craft to move the district forward by eliminating barriers and obstacles. So.
Let's talk nuts and bolts of the program. It's bringing diverse groups of students together to basically talk it out.
Well, the council itself will include everyone. At this point, the people who came to the table on November 13th were principals, teachers, some of our chief officers, and some of our heads of departments, as well as departmental staff from downtown offices, and students. So it's a cross-representation of our entire district. And at some point, you know, it's anticipated that everybody will play some part in moving us forward with this. This is now a smaller group that will help guide, direct, and be kind of a clearinghouse of our efforts.
Now, how were the participants selected?
They weren't actually selected at this point. Letters of invitation went out to everyone. So it was a matter of who responded and who was able to come at that point. And you know, there are some issues that we'll need to flesh out in terms of timing and what's going to work most for everybody. But the point is that we are all at the table, whether we're physically sitting at the table or we are at our particular sites doing the work that we have undertaken.
What are we hearing from the students at the ground level in the school about this program and their participation?
Well, they're real excited about it because, you know, we have a lot of differences in our building, and diversity is a great thing, and we got to make it a great thing. And I think we're taking the proactive steps to identify how great it can be. Our students are learning through our program that we can work collectively and move forward socially and academically. I think they're just excited for their voice to be heard. And I think that's a great thing, because so often do we go into a building as adults and we get in the way of learning and get in the way of some of the social aspects in reference to our buildings. And it's a great opportunity for them to have a voice and for them to help build solutions for us to be proactive in what we do in the educational setting.
So, application of the information learned from the students, say at the ground level in the schools, how will what they say actually be applied in the overall scheme of things?
Well, the council will develop a strategic plan, and as I said, we're at the beginning steps of the formation of the council and what it will be composed of and what projects it will undertake. But certainly everything will be tied into the elimination of the achievement gap and all of the issues that are relevant to doing that. So projects, we anticipate that the group, when they have formed a cohesive group, will develop projects and activities and set milestones for themselves so that we can be accountable and see what progress we're making over time.
Now, this is still in its formative stages. The
Yes.
programs and things are rolling out incrementally. But Dr. Wise, the goal overall is that this will be a district-wide initiative?
Well, I think a district-wide initiative, but if you follow Ms. Jackson's point of view, and she's one of the facilitators of this work, it'll become organic. It needs to be owned by everyone. It can't be owned by a small group. So we have a group guiding me in our work, the self-formed council, and they'll have sort of an executive or a core group that helps guide it, but eventually it's got to be owned by everyone. If you take what Mr. Davis says, that diversity is a good thing, that means difference is a good thing. And for a city like Jacksonville, we all love Jacksonville. Jacksonville's got to be able to embrace difference as a good thing, not as an impediment. And we've got a long way to go in our city and in our school district before we can say we are actionable around the fact that diversity, that difference is a good thing. And so I can't wait till we get there, and I don't think it'll take us years and years to get there. I think it needs to take us months and months to get there, but we need to have high expectations that we can bulldoze these obstacles, especially around those cases like race, gender, socioeconomic status, what zip code you live in, how involved your parents are or aren't into how they're treated in the classroom and what their expectations of them are in the classroom. So this is, I'll tell you what, this is groundbreaking, and it's also very tough work, and work you don't set out to do unless you manage it real carefully, because you can actually do some damage if you don't do this work in just the right way.
Well, finally, before we go, how do you foresee this will overall affect the achievement gap that we're dealing with?
You know, until we have high expectations for each and every child, irrespective of their background, irrespective of their parents' background, irrespective of their zip code, we won't have gotten there. Until we have every single educator, parent, student, administrator, you name it, working to not impose their own level of perceived superiority over other people, we won't be there. So those are two important milestones, I think. And all that stuff plays out in the classroom, either negatively or positively. So we just aim for all 8,500 classrooms to be the very best they can, and for us to say there are no obstacles to the work being very great for every single student.
Thank you, Dr. Wise. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Next, we'll talk about the new school board leadership and later on the new first grade. You're watching School Matters.
At Duval County Public Schools, did you know? 4.2 million. That's the number of high school students nationwide who participated in sports last year. These athletes experienced about 1.4 million injuries, a 50% decrease from the last decade. Injury rates were at least 2 times higher in the mid-90s than they were last year. Duval County Public Schools, inspiring dreams that influence tomorrow.
This month, the Duval County School Board met for the first time under its new chairman. Vicki Drake has represented District 6 for 4 years, and before that was active in several school advisory councils. We're also joined by the board's new vice chair, Betty Burney. Now, the board has worked closely with the superintendent over this past year on several key educational issues and continuing initiatives, and that work will continue into this new regime, if you will. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And first and foremost, what are some of your goals for your upcoming tenure?
Well, actually, my goal is our goal. About 4 years ago, the board sat down and talked about education and what was important to all of us, and we all agreed that student achievement was our primary focus, and that was the thing that we were going to put our attention on, and we were going to head straight for making those children successful, so that when they reached being a senior in high school, they had a wide variety of choices ahead of them. We wanted them to be able to say, you know, I want to go to college and I can do that because I have the educational background I need. Or they might say, I want to go to trade school and I can do that because I have the educational background I need. Whatever choice they wanted to make, we wanted them to have that educational background. And so that has been our focus that we are going to continue is student achievement, which sounds a little bit simple. And in a way it is, because the mission of education is simple. The work is not simple. The work is very hard.
And key components in achieving those goals, certainly teachers, administrators, and parental involvement all in conjunction.
Yes, those three components are exactly what we're going to have to do to make sure that our students propel forward. As you know, we live in a global society, and our children have to be able to compete globally. They have to be able to compete technologically and academically, because their new competitors are not just students in Duval County, not just students in St. Johns County, but all over the world. And we're just trying to make sure that we have all of those three components together so that our students can actually feel that when they leave Duval County's public schools, they can say they had a first-class education.
Now, how will the board work with the superintendent to achieve these goals?
Yeah.
Well,
He's wondering himself.
actually, we work very well with the superintendent. We've got a great working relationship, and we work together as a team of 8 because that's really necessary. It's the job of the board to study education, to look at all the options, and then to create policy that gives the superintendent the framework to carry out the work that needs to be done. And this board has been very dedicated in limiting itself to that policy work and staying out of the management area because that's the superintendent's area. So basically, we direct and he carries out the work.
What do you feel will be one of your biggest challenges?
Well, I think we've got a lot of big challenges in coming. Teaching every student to read is always a big challenge. And we still have way too many students in our upper grades that are not reading on grade level. So I think that's probably our primary challenge. And then, of course, the class size amendment requirements is going to be a big challenge as we get closer and closer to a class-by-class level, because we don't have the number of schools that we need. We don't have the land to build them on. And in some of the areas, the land isn't going to be available to purchase because there are areas of town that are built out. So there's a lot of challenges facing us for the future.
And those are all the things that if you go out into the community, you will hear people talk about, parents talking about literacy issues, overcrowding in the schools, and those types of things. Dr. Wise, how do you anticipate working with this board to kind of get these things hashed out?
Well, we've had 13 great months together, and you know, some people from the outside can watch the televised coverage of the school board meeting and say, oh, it looks simple, you just come in and do some policy and the superintendent does that. And it is very difficult work, just even at the governance policy level. And you can watch behind the scenes, not necessarily in that public meeting, you watch behind the scenes. We push each other very hard. I laugh about the board. This is a high maintenance board. They're high maintenance for all the right reasons. They're very hard on me. But I think we're hard on them too, and I think that's ultimately how this governance team of 8, 7 elected, 1 appointed, can help propel the system, to use Mrs. Burney's phrase, propel the system to world-class status so it truly can compete. Every single child competing, no matter where other students are coming from, regionally, nationally, or internationally. And I'm feeling really great about it. There's not another place in the country, there's not another board I could work for where I could do the kinds of things professionally that I want to do at the level that I can do them here. This has just truly been a great 13 months. A little tired, but it's been a great 13 months, and so I'm looking forward to this next year and the work we have to do together.
Now, you ladies both have a very long history of working in the district and for children. Ms. Burney, particularly, you've written a book even about some of the issues near and dear to your heart
Yes, I did. The book, which is entitled If These Chains Could Talk, the great part of it is that I helped to shape the book, but the book was actually written by inmates who are in Duval County's public schools or who were in Duval County public schools when they were incarcerated. But the advice that they've given follows just right along with what the 8 of us are saying. Stay in school. Listen to your parents. Stay in school. Listen to your parents. And so when the messenger, if you will, that is given the message to teenagers says stay in school, it means a great deal.
And you speak a lot, very regularly, to the children about these issues.
Yes, I do. I try to make sure that I'm accessible because for years I worked with challenge schools, or schools that were considered challenge schools in the district. And I do know that we have some geniuses out there who really just don't know it yet. And it's our job to just uncover it, speak to them, and just speak truth to power, to just let them know that they are geniuses in the rough.
So much goes on behind the scenes, Dr. Wise, as you mentioned earlier. A lot of red tape, a lot of policy to push through, and that type of thing, just to make sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, all of that type of thing. But that said, how important is it to get out into the community, listening to what the parents, the students, and the teachers down in the trenches every day have to say?
Well, the bad news is you can never do enough of that. The good news is this board was committed from when I got here to holding regular forums. Typically you go out in the community as the board superintendent team when you've got tough or unpopular issues. Rezoning schools, we'll have some of that to do. New policies around grading and academics, we'll have some of that to do. We have had that, but this board's committed. They're now in their second round since I got here of community forums with no agendas. You come forth, we're just there to listen to you, and in a district where every board member comes from a different part of the geography, you can get real singularly or hyper focused on just your geographic area. Every one of those forums, every board member's there, and we just did one in Ms. Burney's district last week, and although it was not attended like we would want it to be, people are there, we're there, the principals are there in that geographic region, and so bottom line, we can't do enough. We're doing all that we know to do, and in every creative way we know to do, not just in the schoolhouses, in faith-based organizations, in civic centers, in libraries, and so we'll keep pushing that because that's a huge part of our work to help parents and families stay connected to the work, especially as we push the system so hard.
And your message in wrapping things up, your message to the community as a whole, to the parents, to the students, to the business owners in the community, what would you like them to know about your goals and objectives?
Well, you know, this is their school system, and these are their students, and we want them to be a part of working with the schools and making this a success. Having them communicate with us and having opportunities to communicate with them is hugely important because it's going to take all of us to educate children and make them successful for the world that they're facing today. So get involved and talk to us, you know, and be part of the team to make this all work.
Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, the new first grade. This is School Matters.
At Duval County Public Schools, did you know? 148%. That's the increase from last year of the number of Duval County students enrolled in advanced placement courses. Last school year, there were fewer than 5,000 students enrolled in AP classes, while this year there are more than 10,000. Duval County Public Schools, inspiring dreams that influence tomorrow.
Newsweek magazine journalist Peggy Tyre wrote recently that the earliest years of schooling have become less like a trip to Mr. Rogers' neighborhood and more like SAT prep. She goes on to point out that 30 years ago, first grade was for learning to read, but now reading lessons start in kindergarten, along with math worksheets. And while many kids are thriving, some are ending up repeating a grade, especially in urban school districts. Are we pushing our children too far, too fast, or is this a reasonable expectation? Joining Superintendent Wise and me for a look at this issue in Jacksonville's public schools are Acting Chief Officer of Curriculum and Instructional Services, Amy Lindgren, and Jacqueline McKinney, a kindergarten teacher at Henry F. Kite Elementary School. Thank you for joining us. First question, what has pushed this increased rigor in the earliest grades of schooling?
What has pushed it? Wow, it's coming at us from all angles, and the most important thing is more students are ready than ever before. We've got lots who aren't yet, But the world economy, we just talked about that in the last segment, the world economy is making it harder and harder for American children to compete. And so what we're working to do really hard in the Duval County Schools is get the level of rigor, to use your terminology, Stacy, at the right level, and do all of the things to make sure that we maximize students' opportunities to get there. I wouldn't go so far as Ms. Tyre to say it's SAT prep going on, but we're moving to more academically focused kindergarten classrooms and first grade classrooms. So yeah, you're right about that.
How have you seen the curriculum change for kindergartners in your experience in the classroom? You've been in the classroom for how long?
I've been in the classroom for 22 years, and I've seen kindergarten evolve from play stations to structured classrooms where they're learning through play, but it's academically inclined.
Now, how are the children responding to those changes?
They're responding very well. We have kids that are reading now, and it's just the second term of the year. And so they're responding by learning and cooperating, and they're learning at different levels, and so no child feels intimidated, and they're having fun.
What type of programs is the district implementing to continue moving the earlier grades towards a stronger academic focus?
Well, really, we do a lot in the area of literacy as well as mathematics. Now, the types of programs that the Newsweek article talked about are not the kinds of programs you're going to see in Duval County kindergartens. We do not have kids sitting at desks doing piles of worksheets. Instead, you're going to see real relevant kinds of programs for the kids. They write about themselves. They do real experiential kinds of things in mathematics, like graphing what they have for dinner or for lunch that day. They buy things using different denominations of money from the classroom store. So there are real experiential kinds of things that engage students in their learning. So the kids think it's fun and it's like play, but it really is learning at the highest level for them.
That is a very important component, making the information applicable, but presenting it in a way that is most easy for the child to soak in?
Yes, meeting the individual needs of each individual. You will have workstations set up for every child, and they're going to various stations, learning things at their pace that will help them to meet the challenges of our changing society.
I haven't had a chance to be in the kindergarten classrooms at Kite Elementary School yet, but I've probably been in 28 or 29, maybe 30 or so kindergarten classrooms, and I can tell you everyone is still a lot of fun, really engaging, very nurturing, very warm and caring. We use terms like print-rich, a lot of stuff, a lot of words around, a lot of colors around. So
sensory overload.
Well, it could be. Not quite like Disney World, but you know, they're great places to be, and I like to think this is a better kindergarten than back in the day when all of us might have been in kindergarten or not have been in kindergarten, depending upon the state where we lived. I think this is a better kindergarten and better first grade now, and I think it's more fun than it was before. It was pretty boring, let's face it, back in the day when we think everything was so rosy. It's not boring now.
Homework. How much homework is the average kindergartner seeing a night?
Well, we give them homework every night, but it's things that they are learning in the classroom, and they take maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes of the parents' afternoon.
Okay, and how are parents reacting to this all? That was my next question.
Parents love homework. For some reason, they're asking for more homework, and we're saying, well, we don't do worksheets, so you can get workbooks and other games and activities online or something like that that will also enrich them at home.
What will the future hold for this curriculum? Are we looking for an increase in, are we make it even harder? Or are we good here, or what's the future hold?
Well, global competition is never going to let us reduce standards, and the expectations are going to be there and probably get more rigorous. But again, we have to put it into the perspective of what is appropriate for children that are 5 years old. And we can do that through involving them in the kinds of activities that really mean something to them and that motivate them to want to perform and want to go forward with their learning. That they aren't just passive, sitting there doing it because the teacher says it's going to be done. They're actively doing it because it's really fun and it's really interesting, and they get a very great sense of accomplishment out of it.
Now, certainly because kindergarten has become more challenging, that ultimately pushes all the subsequent grades to a higher level. Is that one of the overall goals that we're looking for in the district?
So is it like a trap?
It's a trap.
No, but we are trying to be very careful to make sure that every graduate of the Duval County Schools is adequately and sufficiently prepared to compete for high-wage jobs or go on to college according to his or her choice, not according to how we relegated them according to the work that we gave them by school or by classroom. And so that's why the standards work is so important. And I'll tell you, when we become great at this as a city, we're going to think about what are we doing as a city, not all the way down to just the Mayor's Book Club, the 4-year-old program. It's wonderful for us, but what are we doing for our 3-year-olds, our 2-year-olds, our 1-year-olds, and our newborns? As a city, we've got to be really great at this birth to 5 generation, because I think once we get there, it can be even more fun, and you know what, we might see the level of performance go up even stronger than where we've gotten them to. But I think it's an exciting day for all this, and I'm hoping parents can stay excited with us. And it is a fun time to do homework in kindergarten. We get the complaints about 6th or 7th grade when the math homework comes home, and then it gets a little more challenging for parents. But kindergarten, it's still a lot of fun.
Now, with this increased academic curriculum, are we seeing at all an increase in students who are having to repeat this kindergarten grade? And what's being done to kind of help them along if this is a bit too challenging?
Well, I think that what you have is kind of a cyclical process that happens in education all the time. What I would really love to see is eventually our system become a birth through mastery system, so that every child could take exactly the amount of time they needed to become proficient and successful in another level of education. Unfortunately, the way our grade structures are, we have certain times when teachers say, you know, this child needs a little more time to master this content in order to be successful at the next level. Unfortunately, we have this term retention that oftentimes carries with it some baggage that we really wish did not exist for kids, because really we're just asking them to be allowed the time they need to be successful at the next level.
And so bottom line for parents, very quickly, just some very quick tips for parents if in fact they are looking to reinforce the concepts at home. What should they be doing?
Become more involved, make themselves visible at the schools, get into the classrooms and see exactly what is going on and the type of activities that they can do at home to make learning more fun as well. And that will help enrich their kids so that they can push the skills at home also.
Thank you very much for joining us, for coming today. If you have any questions about any of the issues on today's program, you can email them to schoolmatters@educationcentral.org. I'm Stacey Ellison. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you'll be with us again next month for another edition of School Matters.